Okay, recording is on.
Welcome everyone to the celebration of the launch of Dragonflies at Night with our author friend and sister Anne Marie Bennett, who is truly a leader in spiritual health and therapeutic arts and in creative endeavors. I'm Lisa Miller, and I'm a mind-body health specialist, and it's always my pleasure to talk to other women who truly live the lives that they provide medicine for in others. Anne Marie Bennett has been writing stories and novels since the 6th grade, when she was assigned to write a short story and instead turned in a 40-page novel about a little girl who stumbles on an underground cat colony. How perfect is that? Her teacher was so impressed that he sent it to a publisher. And while the publisher didn't respond, Anne Marie decided right then and there in 4th grade to be a writer. We flash forward 50 years, she's still writing stories. I wonder if there are any cat colonies in your upcoming work. She writes stories and novels, among other things, and she's published several books, as many of you know, about the intuitive process of soul collage, as well as her 2 unique cancer journeys. Last year, she released a 50-page novella, All You Need Is Love and Lilacs, plus a young adult novel called Come As You Are. She's now focusing her creative energies on creating books and stories that are good for the soul. You know, that just makes me swoon, Anne Marie. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed.
Thank you for interviewing me. I really, really appreciate this opportunity to share my story.
And we hope that this story, this gathering today, really continues to grow light for everyone. As an author and program developer, you're a woman of great creativity. And most of us know you through Kaleidosol, though some know you as participating as superfans in your latest book. But Kaleidosol is a company you founded based on the therapeutic arts process Soul Collage, and you've been running it since 2005. So I mention it now because it's your, it seems among all the creative projects that you endeavor, you really have held the space for this the longest. And not everyone is aware that you have fought cancer twice and won. How has fighting cancer strengthened your spiritual muscle, and how has that tenacity been applied to writing and publishing and so many of the creative endeavors you undertake and hold?
Well, start with a big one, right?
Let's get right to it.
Yes, I mean, both of the cancer journeys I went through were really big wake-up calls for me in terms of what I wanted to do with my life, or what my creativity had sort of slid each of the times. One was 2001 and 2, and the other was 2011 and 12. So I think both of those journeys woke me up. I think the biggest thing I learned from the second one was that I'm not alone, that I'm connected to something bigger than me. I mean, I've always known that. Even since I was little, I've had that spiritual, soulful thread running through me. But I think because both times, particularly the second journey, the first cancer journey was stage 2 breast cancer, very treatable, and it was treatable, and I had a great surgeon. And but the second journey was a different kind of cancer in the same breast, and it was fast growing. You know, when I looked online, I see words like fast growing, and I can't think of the other word, but it was pretty scary. And I think, and both times it kind of brought me up to, I'm not going to live forever. And what does that mean? What does that mean for me and what I'm doing with my life? And it was just, like a year and a half after the first cancer journey that I discovered the process of soul collage. And that really altered my journey a great deal, because then I was being called to be a facilitator, and all kinds of creative things were happening. And then at the second journey, I was really, it was really, the second journey was harder in one way, but it was easier in another way because I had the entire Soul Collage community lifting me up. And I really knew I wasn't alone at that point. And after the second cancer journey, I don't know if you're going to get to this, if I'm skipping ahead of the questions, but
Go ahead.
after,
Go ahead, please.
or during
Go
the
ahead.
second journey, when I was going through treatments, a friend of mine, Nita Penfold, who I highly recommend you read her poetry, sent me a poem that she had written called Think of the Time When. And it brought me back to what it was that really, what was that one thing that lit me up, that one thing that made me feel myself and made me feel at home with myself. And what that one thing was always was writing stories, making up cat colony stories, making up stories, just writing it down for the pure fun of it. And that, you know, I mean, that really changed, again, the course of my life, because it took like maybe another year or so before I actually started sitting down at the computer again and making up stuff.
This is a perfect time. This is a perfect time for this beautiful poem. It's called Think of a Time, Nita Penfold. You were truly yourself that age, before the mask was pulled tight, before the roles were welded like armor to your skin. Remember the one thing you loved above all else, that given perfect freedom, you could be found doing when they looked for you to do something else, something useful, the thing that made you feel whole and helpful, full of something that lifted you out of yourself but anchored you home, so that you didn't know where that thing began, where you ended. So much were you in the river of it, the flow of hand to heart and heart to soul. That was all one piece called you. You know what it is. Remember it. Hold it up like a shiny vintage ornament. Turn it to and fro. It is the true gift just below your conscious thought, itching at you to touch it once more. Latch onto that feeling. Let the stillness find you and the wholeness bubble up from the bottom of your stone well. What might you do with it now? So truly beautiful poem. It moved you to really alter the course of your life in a way. And I love that we're talking about this, because it's so easy for women. We tend to do this. We look at each other's lives and we say, oh, she's really good at that. She has these extra skills. She has this drive, this know-how, this charm. I don't have that. I can't do what she does. There's something extra special about so-and-so, but it's not so for me. And what we're really talking about here is that each of us have in our own lives this ability to tap deep into the core of being, to find that light. You don't always need an illness to be the wake-up call, but each of us has a turning point experience in our lives that can be the wake-up call. And so it sounds like for you, cancer was what made you, as you said, wake up and really ask yourself the question about what it is that you want, and to do something for the pure fun of it. Why not? So I loved when we were getting ready for this interview and you said when Dragonflies at Night started to come through and it was clear to you that it was a romance, that you were like, ew, romance, like, ew, it's so not important. It's so frivolous in the world. Talk to us about just the pure joy, how that was a decision, a conscious decision that you made that then led to really the completion of this project.
Yeah, well, somewhere, let's see, it was around 2013 that I started just, you know what, 3 or 4 times a week, I can sit at my laptop for an hour and just make stuff up, you know, a children's story. I would just sit down and a sentence would come to me, or the last thing I read, and I would just write a sentence and then I just keep going. And some of them I would write 3 or 4 times and keep it going. And some of them just stopped after one and it didn't have any energy. And then in 2014, I happened to start I know some of you know that I'm a big fan of Josh Groban, and I often wonder about people in the public eye like that and how they handle relationships, or how they can truly find someone who loves them for who they are when they're, you know, so in the public eye and people always want things from them. And I kind of thought it would be fun to make up a girlfriend for him in my little writing adventure. So it actually started out with the name of Josh. And I had to change that after I realized I was going to keep going. But and so I was just writing this little romance, and I happen to love Kapalo, so I thought, wouldn't it be cool? They were both kind of like yoga. They could meet in that little yoga class, and he could be trying to be incognito, and she would recognize him. And so I was writing that, and it just kind of kept going for a few weeks. And like you said, I was like, this is like a romance. Do I want to write a romance? I don't really even like to read strict romance where, you know, it's formulaic. I'm not into those. They're a little boring to me and too predictable, I guess. And that's what it looked like I was writing. And I kind of got stuck with it, and I kind of left it for a while. And then I started taking a Jennifer Louden online course called Get Your Scary Shit Done. And people in the course could choose what scary thing they were approaching that they wanted to do. Not everyone was writing. Some people were losing weight. Some people were training for marathons and things like that. But it made a conscious decision. This is what I want to finish this. I want to keep going with it, but I don't know where it's going, and or why I feel so connected to this story and these characters. And at one point I was in a private Facebook group for this class, and I was typing just what you said. I don't know why I'm writing this romance. It's so like not important. There are more important things I could be doing, and like that. And one of the other participants typed back to me, and I'll never forget it. Another little change in my path. She said, "What if your writing this was just for the fun of it and because it gives you pleasure? What if you just kept going because you enjoyed it and it gave you pleasure?" And that really snapped something in me, like, yeah, that's right. That's what I'm doing here. That's the whole point. I'm just doing it for me. And so I kept writing it. And, you know, in the creative process where you have, well, for me anyway, in my creative process, I have something that I'm working on, and then it's just like in the back burner of my consciousness all the time. I might be taking a shower, taking a walk, and I see something or I get an idea. And that's how these other elements began to weave themselves into what was just a romance. So that's why I call it more than a love story, because it's not just about Ben and Savannah falling in love and living happily ever after. It's about different kinds of love. It's about the love of a mother who is still connected to her daughter and who still is sharing part of the story. And the character of Tomas, the intuitive, who she meets in California when she goes out to visit Ben, he came to me in meditation as one of my, he's in my inner world. He's kind of my inner healer. But he had something to say about how the story could deepen. And yeah, so for me, after that, taking that class, and I mean, I learned so much more in that class about finishing something that was scary, about taking tiny, tiny steps and celebrating every tiny, tiny step. And one thing she taught us was that mood doesn't matter. Like if you're committed to sitting at your computer 3 times a week for an hour working on this, it doesn't matter if you don't feel like it. It matters that you've committed to that and you're going to stick to it. So just, I've learned so much in that. It really shaped me, and it helped me make that decision that I'm going to finish this.
I see so many people taking notes.
Oh, really?
You're really, yes, you're speaking to the heart of the matter, really, truly, about getting shit done, as Jennifer Louden,
right?
Getting scary shit done.
Yeah.
Because really, in the end, we all need support. of some sort. You know, it feels to me like no project, no matter the undertaking, exists in a vacuum. It exists for any of us solely. You know, we all need to ask for help or support or resources at some point. So I love that you're talking about this, that even though naturally you're a very creative person, and evidenced by the fact that ideas come to you while you're taking a shower or taking a walk, you also did something very specific with this project, as you do with most of them, is in creating a structure for yourself by reaching out, being part of a community, and by keeping yourself accountable to the structure that you yourself set up. So it's no one else's shoulds, no one else's parameters, but it's more like, here's a suggestion. If you're truly trying to reach your goal, here are some parameters. Here's a suggestion. It's up to you whether you want to work with it or not. But then it was you individually that took the steps to complete that. I want to invite everyone again to ask questions. Now we're rolling through our juicy conversation here. If you have a question for Anne Marie, put it in your chat box, because here's your opportunity. You are sitting shoulder to shoulder, Brady Bunch box to Brady Bunch box, with someone who manifests. This is a deeply creative person. I think we're all creative here. A deeply creative person who really is able to take an inspiration, a desire, and transform it into something tangible. So
I see Linda is asking, the course was called Get Your Scary Shit Done with Jennifer Louden, but I don't believe she offers that anymore. But her book that recently came out this spring is called Why Bother? And a lot of what I learned she has put in that book. It was kind of like we were approaching something that we didn't know if we wanted to do. And it was kind of like a why bother. For me, it was kind of like, why should I bother to finish writing this story? And
yes.
Anyway, so I learned how to bother. And a lot of what she taught also is about imagining that thread of desire that you have for whatever project it was. So for me, it was tapping into the desire I had to write. It's not and write stories, make up stories, as opposed to writing essays or newsletter columns or whatever. But to tap into that desire, to give it an image, I had a golden cord that I still have hanging over by the window that reminds me of my desire to write, to be a writer.
And you went back to your childhood, remembering that was what brought you joy.
Right.
So Karen Regina would like to know, what were the most challenging and surprising aspects of the whole process for you, Anne Marie?
Well, I mean, I have to say the most challenging part has been this past several months of working on ways to get it out into the world. So, giving birth to it, but then how do I share it? So that really has been challenging, because that's really, really left brain. It's all very left brain. I have been able to throw some creativity into the book promotion process, but as for the writing, I think the most challenging part for me was when I realized that Auntie Zan was going to have a voice and a part. And if you haven't read it yet, Auntie Zan is Susanna's aunt who has had several strokes and is in a nursing home. And she can't speak, but her mind is very active. So nobody can have a conversation with her. It's just her narrating what she's thinking. And since she's had a stroke, she's not thinking really clearly and she can't remember things. So those were the most challenging chapters to write, were the ones from the point of view of Auntie Zan, except for towards the end, which I won't say anything about, but that one kind of flowed really easily, more easily.
And why did you choose the settings you choose? Why Kapalo in particular?
Well, Kapalo is one of my most favorite special sacred places to go. I think I started going there in the late 1980s, and when it was still an ashram, and I was just beginning to love yoga, and I wasn't really particularly drawn to the guru in the white robes, but the teachers that I had, and I took some personal development classes there as well, Even just the first time I drove into the grounds, I just felt like this is my place. We all have places like that.
And I know you've taught at Kapalo too, haven't you? You've led Soul Collage there, I think?
Yeah, 3 times I've taught Soul Collage there. Very exciting. Led some retreats there with Jean Marie Merkel.
And did you, oh, that's right. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just it's been a huge part of my spiritual journey. And I wasn't thinking when I started writing, because the very first thing I wrote was them meeting at the Kapalo in the yoga class, and the beginning chapters came way later. When I realized I was going to do something with this, I realized I had to not start there. But I've been in that room, and I could write it. So it was a place I'd been to that I was familiar with.
And did you do any writing at Kapalo? Did you go to Kapalo and actually do some writing?
I think at one point, at the point where I was writing about the Indian food, when they first meet and then they have dinner together in that little private dining hall, I believe I wrote that maybe while I was there, I can't remember, or immediately when I came home, because I love Indian food and they had a spectacular Indian buffet. So I just threw that in there.
Well, it's great. And this is relevant because you really are inspired by that place. So it makes sense that it would continue to create for you more of a story. So what a beautiful lesson when we're asking ourselves, all of us, what is the next step I should take? What am I working toward? To go back time and time again, either deeply in the innermost part of your spirit or physically to the location, but to go back to those places that are such a joy for you, or as you say, special sacred places. You don't have to physically be there to recall the energy of support and joy that those places bring you. But then they can hold you as you're moving forward in your creative endeavor, whatever it is.
Right. And I think I realized later, after I write a bunch and then I go back and read it, and then after I realize it's turning into something that's not just a romance, I realized that starting it, having them meet at a sacred spiritual place was really kind of intuitive foresight that I had no idea I was doing. So.
Yes, I love that. And in terms of the energy of your story, don't you all feel, those of you who have read the book, that that's part of what you're getting out of it? Yeah, there's some head nodding. Yes, it's such a sweet place to dwell, especially with all the problems and troubles in our lives and globally too. It's just wonderful to have this place where you can go and spend some time in the sacred energy, in the sweet romantic energy of what that is, because it feeds us. It really truly feeds us. It's a light growing story. It's a light growing energy. So making choices about where we spend time and energy, like with fiction, is such a way that not only can we continue to heal and have a little vacation from the problems, but also to continue to grow light in ourselves, even when it seems trivial. This is just a romantic fiction. It's not. It's deeply therapeutic. And actually many wisdom traditions around the world say that spending time with beautiful fiction and a beautiful sunset and art and babies who are laughing and kittens and trees is a way to open the deep intuitive centers in the energy body. So I'd love to ask another question from our friends who are gathered. Pamela would like to know, did you create a detailed story outline, or did you just flow with your intuition?
Yeah, there was no storyline except whatever showed itself to come next. I just kind of would sit down and write. And after a while, I kind of had an idea of what would happen when she got to Los Angeles and she was going to meet the agent and she was going to meet his friends. Like that, I knew that was coming, but I never wrote that down in an outline. No, I think that might be the kind of writer that I am. I don't know.
I love that you know what kind of writer you are. It's really so valuable, to really be able to claim whatever that is. Lisa, our other Lisa friend gathered here today, says, it's so fun seeing bits and pieces of you in the story. When Kapalo came up, I smiled and knew that you loved the place. And of course, musicals and Josh Groban and health food. It's really, there's a little bit of each of us in all the creative projects that we engage in. Isn't that true, y'all?
That's right.
Someone wants to know, Avia wants to know, what do dragonflies mean to you in this book?
Well, and again, dragonflies weren't at the beginning, except I have always loved dragonflies. I will say this, it was kind of at the beginning because she had dragonflies on her yoga mat and she wore a silver dragonfly around her neck like I have. But I didn't realize anything significant about it. I didn't realize it was going to be the whole thing of the book. But when I was in my 30s and I had met my husband to be, we were living together with his two older children who at the time were 10 and 7. I was really struggling with the whole step family thing, and it was not an easy time. And I started seeing a spiritual director. So I was probably 35, 36, 37, something like that. And she was really artistic and creative. And she would lead me on guided imagery journeys, which is how I have come to really love guided imagery. Also, at one time, she was having me relax and close my eyes. And I believe she invited me to, that spirit was giving me a gift, or just to visualize what that gift was. And in my overactive imagination, a dragonfly came to me. And ever since that journey with her, I've always been drawn to dragonflies. And whenever I see them, I feel close to spirit, and I feel connected to spirit. And so as the story kept going, I had to have a reason why she liked dragonflies. And at one point, I actually stopped writing the narrative and just spent my computer time interviewing each character. I must have spent 3 sessions with Ben and 3 sessions with Savannah and Deirdre, and all of them really. Some of them have bigger backstories than could be included in the story. And so when I started hearing her story, she was the one telling me that her mother had died and a dragonfly had come to her after her mother's funeral, and it was nighttime that the dragonfly came. And that was interesting to her because dragonflies don't come at night, and she felt closer to her mother when that dragonfly, and the dragonfly didn't just flit by her, it stopped on her hand for several minutes, which is also very unusual. I had a dragonfly land on my hand once, but it didn't stay for a long time. So the dragonflies in the story come to symbolize the fact that we're not alone, and that actually, I'll just read the quote that's at on the front page. Those whom we love and lose are no longer where they were before. They are now wherever we are. And that's from St. John of Chrysostom. I think I said that right. And that, so dragonflies in the book is the symbol of that.
And dragonflies in indigenous traditions do represent infinity and transformation and continuation and endurance and longevity. Really suits you, Anne Marie.
Thank you. They have very short lives. And I think it's 7 to 14 days once they come out of, they're born in the water. So once they come out of the water, they have very short lifespan. And Savannah's mother in the story, who died when she was 15, was a bubbly extrovert, the opposite of Savannah, but always loved to give parties. And Savannah has created a business called Life Celebrations, where she's a party planner with her best friend, Andy. And so the celebration part of the story is also important, that Savannah's created this business in honor of her mother, and the idea that we never know when our life is up, and we need to celebrate. That's what her mother's philosophy was. And also interesting that I didn't realize this till it was really done. And even maybe this year I realized, oh, he's a celebrity and she's making celebrations. And isn't that interesting? Because they both have the same root word. So,
Ah,
and I didn't do that on purpose either.
don't you love when that happens?
I
When
do.
logically you don't plan something and then it turns out to be a wonderful synchronicity. You know, that's such a sign. Now, if we're talking celebrating the metaphysical aspects of this story, we absolutely should celebrate those synchronicities when they come up too, for you as an artist.
Right. Yes.
And you said something earlier that resonated with me about how this is so fun, how your characters revealed themselves to you. You said a minute ago, you started hearing Savannah's story. And so you would sit down to write and Tomas would come through and little Carly. And am I saying his name correctly? Is it Thomas or Tomas?
No, Tomas. Yeah.
Tomas, yeah. So talk to us about how you're just going about your business sometimes. You're not even sitting with pen and paper or sitting at your computer to write, but you're just going about your business and these characters come through to you.
Well, little Carly, I was just at Stop and Shop one day. And, like I said, the story is always, I'm living with the character. By then I was living with the characters and I was maybe halfway through the book and I knew that she was going to meet one of Ben's best friends who had 3 little kids. And one of them was going to be a girl, but I didn't know anything about her, but I knew she was going to have a special relationship with Savannah. And then I was just at the grocery store and this little sprite of a girl, maybe 7 or 6, with long, straight blonde hair, like a little elf face, and just all bubbly and excited and running all around her parents in the carriage. And I don't think her name was Carly. I just decided that was her name and I put her in the book. And yeah, just little things like that. For me, I get to know the characters when I sit down and dialogue with them. Sometimes I might just close my eyes and imagine me talking to them, but it works better for me if I'm writing it out, as if I'm writing like a little play. I'm interviewing them and seeing what they come up with. It's very imaginative, and I do it a lot in my journal with my inner parts. Like I have a conversation with my inner critic who might be telling me something about this, like, why are you going to sit there for an hour and talk about yourself? I might have a conversation with her. And I've done this ever since I began Soul Collage, having these dialogues in my journal with parts of myself and with bigger parts of myself, spirit guides or whatever. And so the dialogue comes really easy to me when I'm sitting there interviewing a character.
I think that's a really good strategy.
Yeah, it's fun because I never know what they're going to say, and I get inklings about the story that way.
And you said something really key. I never know what they're going to say is really an open door. It's an open door process to letting something come through you, to let creativity flow through you, to let these archetypal characters come through you and speak to you.
Right.
So never having to know, and we tend to be such a logical culture. We're such a third chakra culture, right? Where we need to know everything and everything is yum or yuck or yes or no. But what you're describing is more of an openness to not needing to know.
Yes. It's more about, we say in Soul Collage all the time, trust the process. I mean, maybe we say it so many times that we don't even know what it means anymore, but really meditate on that, because that for me is like the cornerstone of how this book came to be. I just kind of kept trusting that the next thing would be shown. That's kind of how I built my business. It's kind of like how I dealt with all the step family stuff. It's how I dealt with the cancer journeys. It's just like, what's the next thing? And we're just going to do that and then trust that the next thing is going to be shown. It's a lot about trust. And I after that second cancer journey, for me, I think maybe if I have a philosophy of life, it's that a philosophy of a way to get through life joyfully and with creativity and honoring all parts of myself, is that I stay connected to myself and to others and to spirit. that I find ways every day to do that as much as I can. I mean, obviously I don't do it perfectly all the time, but staying connected to myself and to others and to spirit. It's like a trifecta of goodness for me.
Hmm. And so Linda is asking in our chat box, so you feel this was an intuitive process?
Yes. I mean, everything I do creatively is intuitive. Even the classes that I put together, the soul collage classes, the retreats that I put together, the Zooms that I do, the launch parties that are coming up this week, it's all been just do the next thing and the next thing comes, and intuitive, very intuitive. Yes.
So here's a good question following up to that from Karen. So whatever mood you're in doesn't matter. You mentioned earlier, Anne Marie, that in your Get Scary Shit Done course, it didn't matter how you felt about your commitment to sitting down every day to write a little. It just mattered that you did it. So say a little bit more about whether it matters or not, what mood you're in once you make the commitment.
Yeah, I think the lesson there was that that we sometimes talk ourselves out of doing what we really love by saying, "Oh, I don't feel good," or "Oh, I really should go wash the dishes," or like something more practical than sitting down and writing. And for me, what Jennifer had us do was make a list, a list, and I mean a list of tiny steps you could take to break it all down. Because I was at a point where I didn't know what to do next. So my first step was read the first 3 chapters, and my second step was read the next 3 chapters, and then I would just do that, and it only would take an hour, and I would start to get ideas as I was just doing these tiny little things, and then I had a whole, before I even wrote anything again, I had a whole list of things to do, of research the celebrity aspect, research Dragonflies. I had all these kind of left brain things that I could do. And then I started interviewing the characters. I had dialogues where 2 characters who don't usually talk to each other in the story were having a dialogue. That was really eye-opening. So and so it didn't matter if I didn't feel like doing it, because it was such a small step that it was doable, whether I felt like it or not. And most of the time I did feel like it because I was connected to the story and the characters. So I don't know if that makes sense, but sometimes we could say, "Oh, I don't feel like doing it today, I'll do it tomorrow." But since I've made a commitment, and I'm not to say that I did it 3 times a week every day for the whole rest of my life, that's not true, but most of the time I did do it because I was committed to it.
And I love that you're talking about making baby steps out of those tasks. And because baby steps are doable. Like, you're really tired and you don't feel like washing your face and brushing your teeth, but those are 2 little baby steps that you do for your overall health that you can take, and then your reward is the next thing you're looking forward to. Yes, it's also doable in baby steps. I mean, we can tend to, Esther Hicks, who channels Abraham, just says this so beautifully all the time. When you're traveling from California to Arizona, you get in your car, you don't look at the map only to the destination point, but you look at the steps along the way, and you don't think about all the time, every moment that you're driving, all the hours that it's taking you to get there. You're thinking about the next minutes and the next hour, maybe the next rest stop. So every point in the way has its chapter, right? And you write a book, 1 chapter at a time.
And sometimes
so
less than that.
Less than that, yes, that's right. That's true. I can attest.
And a big part of what Jennifer taught me during those little steps was to celebrate when you finished one, was to not just do it, get up and then go wash the dishes or make dinner, but to actually pause and pat yourself on the back, give yourself a hug, do a little happy dance. She was good about happy dances. I kind of liked the hugging myself, and just acknowledging, look, I did that. I'm crossing that off. I did that. That's 1 step down, like that's really big. And I have to remind myself to do that with all the creative stuff that I do, not just writing.
It's good that you know that is important. As a writer, I can say as well that creating a support for yourself, a structured support regularly, can be essential. So you were part of a Get Stuff Done group. Not everyone was writing, but for many writers, it's really important to be part of a writing group where you are accountable to one another, where you submit your work to one another at a regularly scheduled time. I've been part of writing groups for years, and where you get immediate feedback so that you're not always writing to an amorphous audience, that what comes through you is also endowed with the energy and light of why you're writing and who you're writing for. So I highly recommend that you can find your local writers clubs at your literacy centers, but now virtually you can really find writers groups easily anywhere, you know, from around the country or beyond. I want to go back to the chat box. Pamela wants to know, do you believe in revelation? And
I'm not, you may want to clarify that. I'm not sure.
yeah, I think clarify a little. We'll come back. And Lisa wants to know where you can find writing groups. So I have a literacy center, and if you just look in your hometown, in your creative arts programs, your community centers, your really any place where the arts are celebrated in your town, someone will direct you. But check virtually. So I can tell you that you can take a class from the Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning in Kentucky. And our classes are run by writers, authors, published authors, and teachers, and they're excellent. Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning in Kentucky.
You could also go to Meetup. I don't know how many are meeting in person these days, probably not, but I'm sure they're doing Zoom writer groups on meetup.com.
On Meetup, yes, on meetup.com. Good. Well, we have a few minutes left. Type your questions in the chat box. What do you most want to know? Anne Marie, you talk about this way of sitting down and just pulling the golden thread, just following the thread, taking the next step, though you don't always know where the next step is leading you. How did you come to be so trusting in that process? Because I understand it can feel very scary for people to just be that open and trusting without knowing. Don't we all want to have the answers to something in some way ahead of time? Like, what does this mean? Why should I do that? Where is this leading? And it can be scary. People can feel that they're jumping into the unknown. So talk to us about how you've established this trust so deeply in your being that it now shines a light into all your endeavors.
What a great question. I've been sitting here while you're talking, thinking back on my life, like how will I answer that? And I mean, I've always had an intuitive bent toward me, like, but I believe it really got honed and shined and perfected almost when I started Soul Collage, because in Soul Collage, we are guided, or when we first learn it, we're told to just pick images that call to us and make this little collage, put them together however it feels good, and then see what happens. And then we journal with the card, we dialogue with it, it tells us its wisdom. And we, most of the time when we make cards, we don't know what they're about to say or what the wisdom they have for us. But I believe that with all the cards I've made and all the journaling I've done and the readings I've done with my cards, I really feel like I've come to believe that I don't have to know what's next or what it means right away. It will be revealed in time. That trust, I've really learned that trust mostly through the Soul Collage process. It's partly been part of my life all along, the intuitive feeling of what to do next, but really this trusting that the next step will be shown. Soul Collage, keep practicing that if you want more of that trust.
It's a therapeutic arts process that really brings to voice the inner parts of ourselves that want to speak, and the archetypes that surround us and hold the world together and live through us. So Pam says, in my view, intuitive flow is more of our own imagination and context, whereas revelation comes from outside oneself, directly from spirit. So a much larger supernatural perspective. Do you differentiate between intuitive flow and revelation?
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it? I don't think I ever have differentiated it, but I am aware. I even have a soul collage card where the woman's writing at the typewriter and there's these spirit beings in a boat like pouring light onto her. And I felt like that was my creative muses card, like the spirit using, like where the ideas come from. Some of them do come from inside of me, but who's to say that inside of me isn't all spirit? So I'm not sure there is a difference, really.
Amen, sister.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, and Ramona wants to know, have you ever used your soul collage cards to create a story specifically?
Not specifically, but I can see where in the next story that is bubbling up in my mind, there are some questions that I have about a certain character and what might happen to that other character, and I might use my cards to help guide me through that. But I haven't yet.
And Avia wants to know, what archetypes supported you during this process of writing?
Well, definitely the archetype of creativity. Creator has been a huge archetypal influence on my entire life ever since I was little. And definitely Tomas, my inner healer, even though in the book he's not specifically a healer, he has a highly attuned, intuitive sense in the book, and that's a part of me also. And you know, I have my hermit and my writer archetypes have definitely guided me through this, and my inner writer, I call her Alexandra, they've all definitely supported me.
And Pamela is asking, have you worked with a writing coach?
I have not. I think the closest I've come to the writing coach was those sessions with Jennifer Louden.
And I will tell you that I worked with a writing coach to get my book written. I wrote it in 5 weeks last year. Who knew? Who knew that could be possible? I mean, it was just unbelievable. Again, it's that structure and accountability, and the cheerleading, I'm telling you, was so much a part of that. So you'll learn as you're listening here, as you've joined us here, you'll learn what it is that you need. Maybe you need a course like Anne Marie took, or you need a coach, or you need a writing group, or you need a coach for whatever other creative endeavor you're undertaking, or you need a therapist. But ask yourself the question, what is it that I need in order to move forward with my hopes and dreams? And you know what, y'all? This is a new moon time. We're in about the third, fourth day of the new moon. And so it's still a very potent time to set intentions and manifest your goals and dreams. And tonight is the solstice. So if there's something that you're wanting for yourself in order to move forward, sit today. Today's the perfect day to do it. Sit down with your journal and just write the questions. If you're not sure what it is, just ask yourself the questions. And then go about your day, take a shower, take a walk, as Anne Marie describes. You find yourself living the answers. You find the answers just popping in when you're not truly focused. And then once you're clear, write your intention down on a piece of paper, light a candle, speak it aloud, that the energy of your desire can be carried to the greater forces in the universe. Because the truth is that the intelligence that rotates planets and moves tides and tells trees when to bud in the spring and births babies is the same intelligence alive in each of us. We're always aligned with that. So you can co-create your life, you can create in your life whatever it is that you want. You just need to know the kind of support that you need.
And you need to think of that time when, what is that one thing that made you forget everything else, that one thing you were doing when other people would call you to do something more useful. What was that one thing?
What makes your heart sing? What do you love? Go back to your childhood. What lit you up? Even if your teacher didn't submit your story to a publisher, as Anne Marie's did, but what lit you up? Go back to that play and that let yourself be supported and led. Anne Marie, it's so wonderful to spend time with you and our mutual friends and my new friends. What do you want us to know about your upcoming launch? I think your book is going to fly onto shelves later this week.
It's September 22nd is the launch date officially on Amazon. And I chose that date because it's an important date in Savannah's life. And those of you who've read the book already know why that is, but that's why I chose it. And it's a good thing I chose it because it did take several months to make it all happen. But I would like to read just a couple paragraphs, if that's okay.
Please, we can't complete this without you reading to us.
And it's just, I had 3 passages picked out, and I'm choosing this one because it's about Ben writing a song, and it's about his creative process, and that's a lot of what we've been talking about today. So if you haven't read the book, Ben in the story is a world famous musician, and he's also known for his songwriting. When they got back to the house, Ben worked out and took a shower, then spent some time in his music room playing around with a new song. It was still in the very early stages, but he had a good beginning. Tell me your heartaches and I'll tell you mine, going back in time and how it all came to hurt. And even better than that, he had the ending. And together now, we're telling all the heartaches goodbye. The middle stanzas were being elusive, but then again, they often were, and he was okay with that. He loved this song already and knew it was a keeper. The creative process was a slippery thing. The best way he knew to figure out the middle was to wait and trust that it would come to him in time. He paused, thinking intently. Maybe the songwriting was a little bit like creating a relationship. Here was a really good beginning, and he knew how he wanted it to end, Savannah and him together for always. He could actually see it ending up that way. But it was the whole damn middle that was the tricky part, just like when he was writing a song. He set the guitar down and jotted a few more notes on the page. He'd have to simply trust that the middle would work itself out with this relationship as well as his new song. That seemed like the right thing just to share out of the book right now. Because it's the middle, you know. I knew how I wanted it to end too. And I had the beginning already, but it was that. And that's true with a lot of creative projects, isn't it? We can see the end and we got the start, but what do we do in the middle?
What do we do in the middle? Thank you for the light of your experience and your wisdom and sharing it with us all today in the words of our friends who are here to launch your book. I just couldn't put it down. Someone else said, I love Dragonflies. And finally, this is so inspiring. Thank you and
Thank
beautiful.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And I invite you all to come to one or the other of my book launch celebrations, and we're calling them celebrations and not parties because to honor Savannah and her celebration practice. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a lot of giveaways. I've got 2 special authors, different authors coming to each one to congratulate me and to share about some of their books and give their books away too. So it's really going to be fun. We're going to have music and you can dance if you want. I'm in a kind of confined space here, so I won't be dancing, but one is September 22nd at 4 o'clock Eastern, and the other is Saturday the 26th at 11 a.m. Eastern, and you get to meet my husband too. He'll be here at the very end. And
where can people register, Anne Marie?
You don't need to register, but the Zoom links are at annemariebennett.com/launch, and I'll put that in there so you make sure you spell it right.
Okay.
ANNEMARIEBENNETT.com/launch. that's where the Zoom links are. You don't need to register ahead of time. I decided not to do that. So I'd love to see my super fans, my Kaleidosol friends, and anybody else you want to bring with you to celebrate putting this story out there in the world. I really, really am grateful to you, Lisa, and everyone for showing up for me today. It really means a lot to me, and my heart is really full right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Please unmute yourself if you have a final word for Anne Marie. We can go 5 minutes over, or if you need to leave now, go ahead. But unmute yourself if there's something you want to say.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
For me, it evoked, deep thoughts in the past that I followed always wings, but those are butterfly wings. And I followed it for many years. I did it in Italy in a sculpture. I did it in a woodcut, fly away. I did it recently in angel wings. And I always followed wings. I never thought about it. Since you mentioned the dragonfly. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Carolyn, I see that you unmuted yourself. Did you have something?
I just want to say thank you. I just love the book, and I'm looking forward to your celebrations.
Thank you, Carolyn. I see you're wearing a dragonfly too.
Dragonflies are special to me too, from when I was young, down at the brook in our backyard. And we have a saltwater in-ground pool in our yard. And in the evening, the dragonflies swarm around us when we're in the pool.
Thank you, Carolyn. That's
so they're special, and I think they're very spiritual.
Thank you for that. Thank you for adding your voice. And Pamela, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, is your launch entirely virtual?
Yes, I mean, at this point it kind of has to be, because when I started working on all this back in February or March, before COVID-19, I was going to have a party here at my house. I was going to approach a Barnes & Noble that's nearby, but I just feel like I can't do that now, because we'd all be wearing masks and we'd be standing 6 feet apart. So yes, both of the book launch celebrations are going to be via Zoom.
Of course, you found a creative way to do it. Thanks for asking.
These authors coming coming into the Zoom and can speak accordingly.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. They'll each be there for 5 or 10 minutes. Yep.
Yeah.
And Jennifer Louden is coming on Tuesday, so I'm really thankful.
And
we're all going to be looking for her book called Why Bother? Sharon, you unmuted yourself. Did you have something to say?
Yes, I just wanted to say that it is so, I guess you could say, ironic. I am creative in different ways than you are. And I was doing a rug hooking, and my rug hooking ended up being dragonflies. And I never even thought about dragonflies until I started the rug hooking. And when I saw that you wanted someone to read for you, I was so excited that I couldn't wait to get the book. As you know, I wrote to you several times.
Yes.
But anyway, I just want to thank you so much, and I just admire your grit. Anyway, I just want to thank you. It's been a pleasure meeting you today.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It's nice to finally meet you too.
And Dee, I see you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Oh, Anne Marie, I just want to say thank you. Anne Marie has been my facilitator trainer, and I have followed her. The book is fabulous. I love it. Thank you. I think I said, when's the sequel coming out?
Thank you so much, Dee. It's nice to see you.
Please go ahead, Marty.
Yes, I wanted to say that I requested the book for my public library. So that's a thought for you also. I mean, it's one book for the library, but it gets it out also.
Yes.
So
yes. Thank you, Marty.
It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Well, Anne Marie, a final word?
Thank you. I'll just say again, my heart is full, and I'm just really thankful for each of you. Those of you that read the beta version back last fall, and those of you who became my super fans, and those of you that I love from Kaleidosol, thank you for supporting me on this. It makes this whole experience so much more exciting and joyful.